So let's just make sure that we indeed are. And it seems that something is running on YouTube. Hopefully, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I heard myself, so that's a good sign.
All right.
Good. We got three
Awesome.
people waiting on the stream, so I guess we can welcome someone. So welcome our
Hey,
viewer. Nice to meet you. Hope that you'll pop into the chat and ask a question, and you can also do that on Slido, as you can see down below. The scrolling thing is going on. So yeah. So welcome everyone. My name is Philip. I'm a Cypress ambassador and yeah, course creator, workshop creator, blogger, and stuff like that. Basically, everything I do can be found on my website,
everything.
philipries.com. And yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Mike Cataldo. iHeartJS.dev is my blog, which I'll be working on a little bit more consistently, hopefully soon, now that I'm on paternity leave. I
Can't
work
wait for
at
that.
yeah, I know. It's been a long time coming. Um, I was previously working at Cypress as a DX engineer, and when I did that, I kind of put the put the blogging on hold, and then I got hired up by Lattice and working for them as an SDET and loving it. Been there more than a year, which is a good thing for someone like me. I kind of hop around a lot, and and yeah, and so now I'm on 4 month paternity leave. Go Lattice for supporting me in that, and yeah, and so now I'm hoping to put a little bit of time in between taking care of the baby to throw up some content. So
Congratulations, by
yeah,
the way.
yeah, thank you. Thanks, very exciting
How have you been
and
doing?
tiring, but exciting overall. Well, having a new baby is great, and but it's also exhausting at the same time. But this is baby number 5 for us, for me and my wife.
Oh, so
So
you're a pro.
uh, we're pros. We not really. There's always something new. Always something new with a new baby. But my oldest is 13. He helps out a lot around the house.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
there's perks to having a big family for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, congrats again. So, if anyone's watching, you can leave congrats to Mike. Cheer him up as he's kind of tired. But as you can see, he's happy. So that's good. That's
Oh
what I
yeah,
was saying when we had our first baby. I'm much more tired, but much more happy. So it kind of balances itself out. All
absolutely.
right. Should we talk Cypress?
Yeah, let's do it. So
Well,
they've come up with what, 3 minor versions
I think so.
since we
Not
last spoke.
not sure when was the last code review podcast. We should have probably looked it up. But yeah,
It's been about a
let's
month
take a
ago.
look.
Let's pull
Let's
up the
take
changelog.
Yeah. So I have the changelog over here. Is it big enough? It seems like it's not. Let me make it even bigger now. I think that should do the trick. So, yeah, August of 2nd was the version 10.4. Before that, we had 3.9, and that was July 19th. So I think we talked about this one. And yeah, so since then, we got a couple of releases. Oh, quite a big change log. So yeah, 10.4 was a big one for the component testing. Um, Added React 18 support. I'm not really in the React world, so I don't really know how big of a deal this was. But a fellow Cypress ambassador, Murat Olskan, who is someone you should definitely check out on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'll maybe just link his bio. He's a very
Yeah.
interesting guy, and he updated everything, his component tests to React 18. So I think if you're interested in that, you can take a look into that. And then we got some stuff I don't really use or understand, but there's a new flag: experimental modify obstructive code, third party code. Actually, I do had a little bit of a glimpse into what this is. Basically, CY Origin should help you out with logging into different tools or doing some flows like payment flows and all the stuff that's happening on the third party server. But there are some security measures on these sites, one of them being a thing called frame busting, which I don't really know
Hmm.
what it is, but I am assuming that if you are opening the third party application in an iframe, it will kind of take care of itself, so it's not like misused. And I believe that this is something that should help with that. The reason why I know that is because I've been trying to automate a Stripe checkout flow, and I haven't yet been able to do that because uh, it actually has some kind of hardcore security features, and there was a issue connected to this uh, flag, but it didn't really help. So still waiting for for that one.
Cool.
Uh, so yeah, that is 10.4. We got some bug fixes, etc. So that's about it. I think, at least for the highlights. Obviously not about it wasn't about everything. And then we got 10.5 and 10.6, which interestingly have been released like one day after the other. So 15th of August we get 10.5, and then 16th of August we get 10.6. So that was interesting pace of releases. 10.5 being the bigger one, and yeah, we talked about like the dashboard connection last time, where they would like show the dashboard stats in your Cypress app. And there's now a flaky test indicator in the specs explorer. So that's nice. You can just open your Cypress, npx Cypress open, and see which of your tests is actually flaky on the dashboard. On the
So that's if you're. I'm assuming that's if you're recording when you're running locally, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or is it right? That's what it would. That's where
Uh,
that flaky indication would look like.
Yeah, but not only locally, but it will just flag that test as flaky if even if it's just on CI. It's when it's flaky on CI actually, so you can like start
Oh, okay.
working on it locally and try to debug it and try to find out what's the problem.
Gotcha. Cool.
And an interesting one, I kind of liked this one because it's kind of interesting. So there's a test isolation configuration now, and what this allows you to do is actually none. This is something different. I had something else in mind. There's another flag that's in the 10.6, but yeah, there's. So with experimental session and origin, you open a blank page in between all of those tests to basically make sure that everything clears out, and and you don't have like some artifacts from one test bleeding into another one. Uh, but for some flows, it's not ideal. So that's why Cypress introduced this test isolation option, which you can like go to a legacy mode, and basically it will not do that. It will not visit the blank page. So that's if you need that, it's nice to have this one.
What is that
And
test isolation? Let's look at that real fast. That test isolation link
the dock,
that's
yeah,
there.
let's take a look.
Where does that go?
I think we're over here. Are we? Test structure?
That
No,
put you in a weird spot because I can see
it
test
did.
isolation is a few
Oh
down.
yeah, it may
So
be because
yeah,
I'm
there we go.
zoomed in way too much. So uh, maybe. But yeah, test isolation legacy mode. So when in legacy mode, Cypress handles resetting state for aliases, cookies, clock intercepts, local storage, blah blah blah. And then we
Yeah.
have strict mode, which is the default one. When you default when you have the experimental session and origin flag set to true, and when in strict mode, it is visiting about blank page before each test. So that's so yeah, basically by default, if you're not using the flag, you're not visiting about blank page. If you are using the experimental session and origin flag, automatically you are opening the about blank page, but you can set it up to full, so sort of revert to that. Uh, so yeah, that's
Interesting. I actually yeah, I have actually haven't run into a problem where this would come in come into play or be useful. Have you?
uh, the visiting or not visiting the about blank page.
Oh, visiting the about blank page.
I actually have. So when I was testing Slido, I did have some of the tests that were
Hmm.
sort of quite granular, and they would do an action, and that action would maybe trigger a couple of API calls, but I would only be interested in one of those calls. So I tested that. I didn't wait for any of those next calls, and two things would happen. One thing would be that the requests got cancelled, and if a request didn't get a response, the front end would have some behavior set to that. So before I started the second test, um, my application would try to do something about the unfinished request. So it could lead to some strange situation. And the other one would be if I was testing like if I would be switching users, and I would well, maybe let me put it differently. So let's say I did an action. There were, I don't know, 10 requests that happened during that, and I don't care about them. I basically move on to my next test. Oh, I didn't want to do this. I wanted to highlight our faces, and I guess this is the only option we have. All right then.
Oh well.
Oh well.
Oh, I think
Uh,
actually if we do that, is that what you wanted to do?
oh yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Thank you.
Yeah, we just I just took out the screen share.
Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, let's say I have a test. I open my page, I do an action, and that action will trigger 10 different requests. So when I don't care about those requests, I'm going to move on to the next test. So what's going to happen in Cypress is going to finish the test, is going to run all of the actions that I have in my before each hook, still not close the window, and then as I would go to the test, that would probably have a CY visit. So you kind of would have this situation where there's are before each actions being executed, usually some API calls or something like that, while the window is still opened at the test that was before.
Uh,
So it
okay.
could lead to some strange situation. But if you would visit a blank page before the before each hook, then it would sort of get rid of that. So yeah, I think the about blank thing, I had it in my test. Actually, I did that manually in my end-to-end test just to make sure that they don't bleed one into another, and it did make my
Hmm.
tests more stable. I actually learned this trick from Gleb Bahmuto. He wrote about that one, and a couple of weeks later, the session got released, and it did that. So
Cool.
so yeah, the news is that you can turn it off if you don't need it. But my advice would be it's a good thing. So yeah, an interesting one is that you can generate your view component tests from Cypress will take a look into your source codes, find all the components, and then you can just scaffold the component tests for your view application. That's and that's a good one. And obviously, the biggest one is the Angular component testing. So the Angular
Yep.
developers are are happy about this one. Um, Jordan Powell from Cypress has been talking about this one constantly. So hi to Jordan, great work there. Uh, and yeah, so this is huge news. So that was 10.5, and then we one day later we got 10.6, and this is what was actually the one I wanted to talk about with the component testing, experimental single tab run mode. So a lot of flags. I really like that we have these kind of flags and experiments and stuff like that.
Hmm.
uh, so you can enable to run all of your component tests in single tab, in single window. So before, if you do npx cypress run, oh, thank you, I forgot about this, about enabling the view. So before, if you did npx run and dash dash component, so you want to run your component tests headlessly, it would do the same thing as it would do with end-to-end tests. So you would go ahead, open a window, run those tests, close the window, then move to another spec, open the browser, run those tests, close the browser, etc. So it would go like this. However, for component tests, which are way shorter in time, it doesn't always make too much sense to do it like this. You may want to much rather just open the browser and leave it open for the whole uh, test suite for like all of the components, because they're pretty much isolated, I believe. That depends on the app, of course. But yeah, this is what the flag does, and you can just run your component tests much faster thanks to that. So yeah, I think this will probably get implemented with like a general availability instead of just experimental thing. I believe it makes much more sense to me.
So it runs. So it runs in a single tab as opposed to running in a. So when you say when it says here in a single tab, meaning like the runner and the actual window are in the same tab. Is that what that means, or is it that all of the tests run at once in that single tab? Maybe I just need to try
Yeah,
it for myself and see.
I think the tab might be a little bit confusing because it's not a single tab; it's a single window or single browser. So basically, with your end-to-end test, you open and then close your browser for each spec.
Right.
And with component test, the situation is the same, but it doesn't really make sense because usually your component test would just take like a half of a second, and then you would spend most of your test run opening and closing the browser. So what you can do instead is just open the browser at the beginning of the whole test run all of your component tests there, and then after they're all done, then close your browser. And that's what this does. So I think it kind of
Cool.
makes sense. I like this change.
Nice.
So yeah, I think that's about it for the updates. Obviously, some changes and bug fixes, etc. But nothing that major. Well, of course, there were major updates, obviously with Angular and some new flags. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. Were you
I
aware
I
of
love the pace.
speaking of Angular? Were you aware of with Angular that their protractor is actually getting deprecated?
Oh
Not
yeah,
getting deprecated. It is deprecated, right?
yeah. I knew about that because in Slido we have been using Angular, and I think the deprecation notice actually came. Not sure if it was like 1 year ago or maybe even 2 years ago or a year and a half, something. It feels like it's been like that for quite a long time. That
Yeah.
there was, I think there was at first there was this RFC opened for Angular, where they basically announced that they decided to not maintain Protractor anymore, and they were discussing like what should be the alternative, and
Yep.
yeah, and now, by the way, if you're using Protractor, I think this is a thing we that wasn't live uh, at during the last podcast, is this migrator. So if you go to
Oh, yeah.
migrator.cypress.io, you can actually migrate your test from Protractor to Cypress. So you
I
can just
love this.
take this, migrate to Cypress. It's going to spit out all of the Cypress commands converted. It even shows like a diff, which you can uh, enable or disable. You can copy the whole code and just paste it in your files. It's really nice. Although it's a tool that will probably not do like the it's not like you just insert all your protractor code and be done with it.
Right.
I think it's more of a demonstration of how what's the difference, because obviously you might jump into some things you use in protractor that in Cypress could be considered anti-patterns, where
Yeah.
you would go something like, all right, let's declare a constant and then call it something, I don't know what, click button.
Let's zoom into that.
Oh
Can you
yeah,
zoom
sorry.
into that?
Yeah,
Cool.
and click button, and that would equal to, I don't know, I don't use protractor, so I would assume it's going to be something like browser get something, I don't know. I'm not sure if get is the thing you
Yeah, it's
use for getting element,
browser.driver.get.
but basically this kind of interaction, this kind of code style where you would put your actions into a variable, which obviously, if we were to migrate that uh, into Cypress, it might work, but it would be just very different style of writing the test. So
Go
yeah,
ahead and
use with
put that
caution.
back. Let's click migrate. I want to see what it actually does. Oh,
Oh,
interesting.
get is actually visit in Cypress. I
Does
didn't know
this
that.
function sci visit? Which, yeah, it's at least in that situation, it's not. It's a it's a function that, yeah, I mean, it migrates it properly, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
not exactly the correct pattern. But you know what I like about the tools like this is, like you said, you probably wouldn't put like your your entire code base in here and like your entire suite of tests and then click migrate. Um, like I suppose you could, but to each their own. But what I like about this is there's a lot of things that in one language I haven't experienced this with Cypress, but there are some things sometimes like in one language that I would like to be able to do that in another language. And
Hmm.
so what's nice about this is if you are a protractor, you know, nut and you know exactly, what to do in protractor and you want to be able to do exactly that in Cypress, this will allow you to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
So as a learning tool, I think this is also beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to dig deeper, as they say, you can see like the full list of the how the protractor versus Cypress actually looks like. So on the left,
Yeah,
you see how you would go about, I don't know, was this selecting element and making an assertion that there's an certain number of those elements, and then you have that on the right to see how you would use that in Cypress. So yeah, and you get this nice table, like you have assertions, browser methods, and yeah, interactions, etc. It's nice. I mean, this table is like a really nice cheat sheet that you can use and take a look into how is that different in Cypress. So yeah,
love that. And you can
so
migrate.
far,
Oh, just
only
protractor. Okay.
protractor. Yeah, that's kind of been the the center of this, and I think this was sort of like a experimental project. I think there were different approaches to that. I believe this one. I think there was an attempt to make it. Into sort of a CI tool where you would just install a package and would just do the migration for you,
Hmm.
but I don't think it was. I imagine this approach must have been much harder. Um, and yes, as far as I know, there are currently no plans to have some other tools, but obviously it kind of asks for it. So I think sooner or later there will be some other migration tools here. And this thing is on GitHub, so you can look at the source code. And if you're passionate about creating a migrator, for example, for Playwright or something else, then you could probably do a pull request, and Cypress folks would probably be very happy about that.
Yeah, you have a head-to-head coming up
Oh yeah,
in
I
a
do, I
couple of
do.
weeks, right? Is it Playwright or Puppeteer?
It's Playwright again. It's actually going to be a rematch, so that's it's kind of an exciting one. Wait, let me share the link actually to that. Cause yeah, there's going to be a rematch. Let me show you what's going on. 'Cause last time we had the Cypress versus Playwright, Let the Code Speak, presented by Applitools. So we had that one already. Applitools obviously is doing more of these. In the past, we had Cypress versus Selenium, then Selenium versus Playwright. I think there was one more, but I kind of forgot which one it was. But yeah, Cypress versus Playwright was quite popular. Cypress didn't win that one. Playwright was ahead because we show the code snippets, and then the public gets to vote and decide which solution they liked better. And
It sounds like
uh,
it was fixed. Something fishy going on.
I can assure you it wasn't fixed. We worked with Andy on the examples, and honestly, right before the event, we were pretty sure that Cyprus is going to win. Like Andy told me, he just came kind of sad to the event, and he said, "I think Cyprus is going to win." I was not so sure. I think it would be close, but in the end it wasn't even that close. So it was interesting to see the audience reactions. I think it was I think it was 7-3, but in the end, there was a certain delay with the voting. And while we decided with one of the chapters, I think it was page objects, that the that Cypress won that one. I think afterwards we found out that they were actually even, like, to the vote. So um, even there. So in the end, I think it was like 6-3, or wait, 6-4. How would I? I don't know. It was it was more even than it seemed, but yeah, we are going to do a rematch, and we want to go deeper than just coding snippets. Like, that was the number one critique for the whole thing, for the whole event. That basically, what are we doing here? It's not real world situations. It's basically a
Right.
beauty contest of code. So why do we even do that? Uh, so, and I think, I mean, it's kind of a fair critique of that, and we were well aware of that. That this is not, it's not like we're going to get you through all of the complexities of creating your test suite in Cypress versus Playwright. It's supposed to be fun for one, and then just to show you some of the differences. So that was the goal. But I understand that people want more, so we decided to give them more. And this time we want to go a little bit deeper. This time we're going to be taking a look at, like, more complex testing problems, and we are going to take a look, like, in more general, of how to approach that solution. So I don't want to give up too much, but we will be taking a look at different topics, and I feel like this might be a more realistic view what on how you actually use those two tools, and people get to compare which which approach they identify with more. And I think Cypress has a pretty good chance of winning this one. So we'll see.
Yeah. Cool. I'm excited for that one. I think Cypress will come out on top. I mean, I guess it depends on what the problems are, you know.
Yeah.
Like if the problems are around iframes or around working in different tabs, I can't or cross browser testing in Safari, I think there might be issues there. It's
Yeah.
pretty obvious, where Cypress lacks. But
I mean, yeah,
yeah, that's
that
cool.
was kind of a thing with the last event. We have put iframes there. We have put opening a new tab in there, which we knew that it would be kind of a stretch if Cyprus won that one, although we weren't, like, the difference wasn't that big. It was always really surprising for us, like, what the outcome was. But
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, it we wanted to keep it even. Like, there were obvious slam dunks for Cyprus, there were some obvious slam dunks for Playwright, and we knew about those. But there were most of those were, like, it could go any way, and we were always surprised about how what the outcome was. So, what can I say? It's a fun event, so make sure to join.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely be joining that. Cool. Thanks for showing us that. So let's see. What are we? Have we looked at everything with the changelog?
I think we did. Yeah, the changelog has been done. We've been talking quite a lot. I think it's time for us to dive into some code, right?
Let's do
After
it.
all, it's
Yeah.
called code review. So how about we how about we do some code review? And
Yeah.
uh, and yeah, we actually do have a thing for a code review because one of our uh, members of the Discord community has shared a code review, a code for code review. So let's jump into that. Actually, not sure if I want to. Wait, let me just share my screen. Just give me a sec. I have it over here, and let's go ahead and I'll put it on full screen. Is that visible enough? Let's just go like
Yeah,
this.
what if you open it up in the editor view? Would that be better?
Oh yeah, let's do that. We'll set up the code editor. Oh, I need to
I
zoom
don't know
in.
how that would. Yeah, you'll have to zoom in quite a bit.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So yeah, we got this submission on our Discord. By the way, if you want to join the Discord, you can go. There's a link on the scrolling at the bottom. So that's how you join. But yeah, here's a spec example for testing a gallery app, a neat little application that has some. I see some REST API going on here. It has a login, and what our submitter has decided to do here, and what the approach was to use page objects to sort of interact with the application and create this nice little tightly contained tests that are basically have the description of what the test is doing, and then the test is pretty compact. Like we go to create gallery page, get the image button, submit, and click, and then we check out the URL, and then the other test again is very short. Just take a look at create gallery page, do some action, um, wait for an interception to happen, throw us an error, etc. So yeah, like really compact compact tests. So uh, so yeah, this is it. You can check it out on Discord and let us know in the chat what do you think. But let me hand it over to you, Mike. We
Hmm.
took a little peek into the codes yesterday as we were chatting about what we're going to be talking about. But but yeah, have you thought about this a little more?
So one of the things that I see here is it's not necessarily wrong, but
Hmm.
there's the side.wait submit gallery, and then there's a dot then, and then within that is an expect.
Hmm.
Um, so first of all, the dot then versus dot should actually work a little bit differently when it comes
Yeah.
to um, retries. So if you're gonna use expect, I recommend using it within a dot should.
Hmm.
And even in with this, you probably don't even need to use expect because, for example, with this submit gallery, the one that you're on right now, you could actually do sci.wait and then dot its and
Oh
then
yeah.
take the response status code, right?
Response
Response.
that status code.
Yep. And then dot should equal 422.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can
Yep.
have this sort of a more compact kind of view of what the test is actually doing.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
going to do two things. I mean, it's another way to you could do sci.wait dot should and then pass in the intercept and then within that, same thing. But with this, you're grabbing exactly what you need and then doing a dot should, and then you don't have to have that callback. But also because you're using dot should instead of dot then, you have the retries as well. Because with dot then, if whatever is contained in the dot then fails, there's no well, there is a help me out here. There is a
Yeah.
retry, but it doesn't start at the top of the chain or the previous. I keep
Yeah,
forgetting which one.
it doesn't start. It's a good point here. So the should command, the basic rule of thumb is that it only makes the previous command retry. So when
Yeah.
you are, for example, when you're selecting an element and then filtering from, let's say you find 5 elements and then you want to filter just the first one and then write an assertion, you have to be aware that if those 5 elements can actually change to 6 elements or something like that, then you might get into a situation where you're just stuck with those with those 5 elements and not get to the sixth one, which might be of your interest. Oh, we actually have our submitter over here. Oh, it's my code. I'm a bit late. No, no, you're not late. We're actually discussing that, and
Just on time.
just rewrote a little bit of it. Uh, and it's a good suggestion from Mike. When I teach on my workshops the then command, and then I teach also this approach, sometimes I get asked like, all right, when should you use then? So when should you use something like this, and when should you use something like this? Well, my answer usually is they're the same. Like they do the same thing, so it doesn't really matter. However, if you need to test more things than one, I would choose this because it's like more compact. If you have multiple things to test, right? So you don't
Yeah.
only check status code but the body, etc. Then I would definitely go to then.
Yeah.
Interesting point you had there, Mike, with then versus should. It's a good thing to know that you can also write it like this, right? Should you
Yep. That's
normally you
yep.
pass like the arguments should equal, should be visible, should something like that, but you can pass a callback function like this. So you can use the should command in the same way you would use the then command, but with should you get that retriability.
Yeah. I think
However,
with the
with
weight, it probably doesn't make too much of a difference
yeah,
with the
that was my
retry.
point here that I
Yeah.
wanted to make. With the requests, with waiting, intercepting, etc. It doesn't really make sense. In fact, I would advise you to use then, because if you get a different status code and you have should, and the status code is not 422, it's not the one you're expecting, you're going to be waiting for 4 seconds for this to resolve, but the response from the server already came. It will not change. It will not retry. So with HTTP request, I would definitely go with then here.
Hmm. So you're saying that why would it wait? Why would it wait 4 seconds?
So yeah, let's imagine a situation where you have should here, and
Mm-hmm.
then let's say the status code is 403,
Yeah.
right? But we're expecting it to be 422 with then command. So then is going to take whatever this wait command has yielded. So it's going to intercept the command, it's going to wait for its response, and then it's going to take the whole intercept and we're going to do something over here with it. So we're going to make an assertion that the status code is 422. With then, it will just do instantly. So as soon as the response comes, we're testing it, right? With should, as you rightly said, we have a retry logic. So if the status code is 403, then it's going to retry this for 4 seconds. So that's like the fundamental difference between then and should. That then will just execute the expect immediately. And even if we were in a strange kind of situation where this would be, well, I cannot even like explain explain that. But even if the thing we are yielding from previous command, even if that would eventually change with then command, it's not going to matter. It's not going to
Yep.
retry this expect inside. It's just going to execute it immediately. With should, you're
Yeah.
going to wait for those 4 seconds or how many seconds you set it up to wait for. So it doesn't really make sense with HTTP requests because the answer is already there.
Gotcha. So then the example on 104 where we changed it to use the its,
Yep.
if you did a its and then dot then, would that be more performant in the same situation if you ended up getting a 40, 404 or whatever instead of
Yeah.
422?
Yeah. Exactly. Because should it already has that built-in retry, so
Mm,
it's going to try even if it doesn't really make sense because you're just testing something that will not change. The status code is already established, it's already there. It still
mm,
will fail after. It will still retry. So that's an interesting point. I haven't really realized that while we have this very simple syntax over here, we actually may be less. You said less performance, although the performance is the same. Just the the time to fail is a little bit longer.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, it's definitely like, I mean, I err on the side of readability.
Yeah.
Over performance up to a certain point, right?
Hmm.
Because if you're going to save, you know, 4 seconds um, every once in a while or something like that versus, whatever additional time it takes to
Hmm.
grok the test or something,
I
right?
mean,
I'd
you could.
rather err on the side of readability, but the performance side of it is something now that I think I might start considering.
I mean, you could still do something like this if you want to be sure, right?
Yeah.
So you can
I don't
go to
think I
the
would do
previous
that.
command and set the timeout to wait. Is that the proper
That'd be
proper?
1 millisecond.
Yeah, one
Oh,
millisecond.
I don't know if is it just timeout?
My
Yeah,
brain
that's
doesn't
right.
work now. It's timeout, right? Okay, good.
I think it is. Yeah, timeout
You
one
know what?
millisecond.
Let's look at the docs.
Well, wait a
First,
minute. We should have TypeScript. It should, right? It IntelliSense
we're
or
in
oh, because we're
JS.
in
We're in JS, so we
okay.
will. For
Okay.
some
Yeah.
reason, the autocomplete doesn't really work here in this online thing. Like
Okay.
it shows any for everything, and we have this reference type Cypress. It's with a capital C. Is that a problem?
No,
No, it's the
that's
same.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I don't think it matters.
yeah. Not sure. Maybe restart TS server. That seems to do the trick sometimes. No, it shows just any for everything. I haven't
Mm,
been using JS files for quite a long time. I write everything in TypeScript nowadays.
yeah, me
So
too.
yeah, it has options. Let's take a look into the options. Yeah, we got log through and timeout. So if we pass in something like I did timeout one, I think it could be even timeout zero probably. So the should command will not retry, and you get the failure immediately. So you can always fall back to to this if
Yeah.
you want the simple syntax, uh, but then don't like retry. Uh,
Yeah.
or you could just abstract it to. This is what Gleb does with like a log false. I kind of liked it. So he would do abstract this to a constant. So I'm going to wait, call that don't wait, and then this is going to be the timeout, and then I'll just pass it as a third argument. Oh, not here. Sorry, in here, right?
Yeah, don't wait.
So
Cool.
so yeah, I'm having fun with this. All right. All right, so let's move on. So we talked about That I like the compactness of it all. We talked about page objects, and whenever we talk about page objects in Cypress, it's always like kind of, yeah, is this the best approach? I don't know, but I think it's this is really good. Like the only thing maybe, if I were to like, we talked about this yesterday, right? It's really well written tests. They're all really
Yeah.
good. There's like whatever we suggest is just like our opinion of how that can be approved, and I don't know, like this was as far as I know, this was like a interview assignment, right? Sir John, you're online. You can tell me if that's true. But I see like the clues for me was like there is this document, like how would I approach testing of this app, and there's a README file which seems to be like an assignment. So yeah, the with assignments, it's always like, all right, someone assigned it, they have some expectations, maybe they have communicated them to you, so you kind of need to not only put things how you would do them, but also like cater to what's expected. So if you had an interview before that, and you talked about and you asked about like how do you do your test automation, and they say, oh, we use object oriented programming, we use page objects for testing, we have a uh, huge code base of everything, then obviously it might be a good approach. uh, so let's maybe jump into like the improvements, or maybe something that we might do differently, so you can maybe get some inspiration. Maybe that's useful, maybe it's not. That's up to you. uh, One thing I would probably do here, it's there are these tests that check the invalid URL for different images. So .eps, .js, .html, and they all kind of do the same. The only difference is with this last argument over here, where we have a random URL for each file type. So we got GIF, we got HTML, JS, etc. And I would probably, like, you already have this nice object here, which generates this fake URLs using Faker and adding the uh, uh, what is it, extension to that. This could be nice. A for loop or something like that. You could have it all in one object, and then generate all your tests. Wait, which is it's not the first three or four. It starts somewhere over here. Yeah. So I would probably group these together and put them all like in one test, but with a for loop. Maybe. I would probably have to try it out if it's, obviously I want to make the code readable. So if jamming it all into one object and then iterating over that would make it less readable, then I'd probably try it out, then realize it's not the best way, and then go back. I'm really totally okay with repeating yourself in the tests. But if I had a like very obvious repetition like we have here, I'd probably loop over those. So that would be my like very nitpicky suggestion of how this can be improved. Again, I think this is really good. So, um, what about you, Mike?
Well, one thing that I haven't really looked at in preparation for this is the actual tests themselves and the
Mhm.
structure of the spec. And so now that you've kind of pointed that out, one thing that I would recommend is to actually create a is to actually create a describe and And in that describe, I would just call it like a, so you have this top level, and
Yeah.
then within that, do another describe for invalid, whatever, I don't remember the name of the
Yeah, sorry,
the titles,
the invalid
invalid
format.
URL
Yeah.
format. So I would do a describe for invalid URL format, and then within each of those, and then within that, do each of these I, image, yeah, all of
Hmm.
those. Invalid format for image is what I would name to describe, and then
Yeah.
each of these files. If you weren't going to do a for each, um, yeah, or some kind of loop, that's one thing. Um, yeah, the other thing I noticed too is with the URLs, there was a lot of kind of repetition with like putting in the main what would you call it, like the root of that, and it was also using dot contains. So on 142, if you scroll down a little
Hmm.
bit to line 142, you have
Got it.
this sci.url should, and then this contains.
Hmm.
So a couple things stick out. Is one, you're using a contains when really it should be an, I think it would be an equals this. So
Hmm.
I think if we're going to use contains, maybe perhaps just do contains create, like forward slash create. And then
Hmm.
that way you're just asserting the,
Ooh, happened.
what would you call it? Like the route, right? The route of create. Now it's possible that depending on your application and things like that, maybe you have create in some other route or even in the URL itself.
Hmm.
So you kind of have to kind of play around with that, um, but that's something like that I would maybe
Yeah.
consider is either do an equals or just do a contains, but then take advantage of the contains,
Oh yeah.
and just do that
You can.
yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that. You can actually the CY URL is a good one, but there's one command I
Location.
like to use more. Yeah, that's the location
Yeah.
because that can take an argument, and you
Path
can
name.
go with the path name. Yeah, and
Hmm.
basically that would look just into this part. So if you are already on the base URL of this one, don't even have to be on base URL. It will just take a look at the last part, and then you can go like location path name should equal create or slash create. Not sure if the slash is included or not. I think it's
Yeah,
no.
if you go to the docs for
I don't know. Yeah,
location,
let's look at the docs.
it'll
Yeah.
actually it'll actually explain that. And I think it's important to make sure that you understand what exactly path name includes and what it
Yep.
doesn't include. Um,
This is
because yeah,
top
so it
notch. Look at this. I love this. Sorry to jump in. Just like
yeah, no,
I
that's great.
I use the location a lot, and I always forget
Mm-hmm.
what's what. Like the hash host
Yep.
name, href, everything. And you look at this, and you got it all here. It's I love this. This is probably
Yep.
one of the most visited places of mine in the documentation, and
Is
I
it?
always
Yeah.
I already know where to scroll, I already know where to find it, and it's right there. So path name, yeah, it includes the slash. Sorry, but I jumped into you were talking about something.
Yeah, no, no, no. That this is where I was going. Yeah, this is great because what what this shows you is yeah, it includes that forward slash, but it includes the index HTML, but not anything after that. So you can't include so you can't just do like, I mean, I guess you could say contains app
Mhm.
in this situation, right? But you wouldn't be able to do equals app because there's the index
Yeah,
there, and then also you're not capturing the query if that's something that you want
yeah,
to assert. But yeah,
yeah, that's true.
so I think that's more of a nitpick,
Yeah,
but
I mean, we are like definitely just nitpicking all the time. More importantly, Sir John, have you did you get the job? I'm curious. because it's because I think, I mean, you've done a good job here, so I think you deserve that. I don't know what they're looking for, but obviously this is a good test. So hope you
Yeah,
did.
I think it's pretty clean. I think it's really clean. Um, Again, like I haven't really looked at the tests themselves and what is actually being tested. I'm really just at least I've been just looking at it from a syntactical standpoint.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like, and that's kind of I think that's a good signal here that we didn't, like, when we looked at the code, we didn't really feel like we need to clone it and open the app and try to take a deeper look at it, because you kind of see what's happening with the code. And I think that's a good sign of a well written test where you can just sort of look at it and tell. It makes you a good team member, because if you submit your code for a code review, you're making the job of everyone included a little bit easier. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when I mentioned before, like I err on the side of readability or I bias towards readability. What I mean specifically about readability is when I, as the author, go back to this test, or as someone else that hasn't actually seen this test, good readability to me, the sort of litmus test, I suppose, is if you can read the test and know if you can look at the test, the spec, and know what it's doing without actually running and watching the test, that's a good that's a good test. That's well written.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's nice to be able to do
So
that. So it's refreshing when you have to fix or maintain a test and you actually know what's going on.
Sir John replied that he got the other jobs. They changed the position for this one. They're looking for seniors, and you're a junior. Honestly, I think if you frame yourself as a junior, I don't know. I find this really good. So yeah, and congrats on the job.
Yeah,
That's
for sure. I would say looking at this, I would say it's beyond junior for sure. This is really
It
great.
depends what, like, where you draw the line, because those are these terms are kind of like non-telling. Unless you're a senior, they don't tell you much. And
Yeah.
even when it's a senior job, like, sometimes it's not like you apply for a senior position, you get it, and now you're scared because they think you know everything. And like, if senior is someone who knows everything, then there are like zero seniors in the world. Maybe, okay, maybe one or two, but but yeah, we're always learning, and I think you're on a good path here. All right. One more thing I would maybe want to do is to take a look into the object itself, because it's been referenced quite a lot of time over here, and that's the create gallery page, and we got all galleries. So can I click? I cannot, not able to. Oh, here it is. How do I? Oh, that's the usage. I thought I would be able to just like click and open the file. So let's maybe look at the all galleries, and we got H1. So loads more button div cell heading. So these are obviously used for just selecting elements. So get div H1, and I see this pattern a lot, like the using page objects to sort of have kind of an index of everything that's ever going to be selected. And I believe the reasoning for that is that that that's if the selector changes, we just need to go to one place and change it over there. which is one of the strategies you can choose. Um, However, I think that if we are just like selecting this one button, like obviously if you don't have the access to the code and add your custom attribute, you're out of luck and you have to resort to having a CSS selector, so it will look something like this. But if it will ever change, I think there's a good chance of like you being able just to search and replace everything. At least that was my experience so far. Plus, when it's a load more button, you can like improve the readability by just using a CY contains and then go button with the text of load more. Of course, this
Yeah.
the situation. I don't know the application, right? So this is just like a very nitpicky suggestion of how you can use that. And I would probably just
Yep.
take this and use it in the test. Obviously, if you have multiple load more buttons on the page, then that would not be the best best way of doing that. But I am basically, if I boil down the critique or the suggestion that I would have, is that maybe creating these separate functions is sort of a uh, way too much work for the value they provide you with. Um, but depending on the context, right? It's always it depends. So depending on the context, this might be the best solution there is, or it might actually be improved with the suggestion I'm saying or some other suggestion. You were about to say something, Mike, right?
Maybe, but I do have a thought. um, so one thing I think is a plus to doing this is it demonstrates your ability um, to be able to do this for sure, and it demonstrates an understanding of um, paradigms like classes and
Mm-hmm.
getters and setters and class um, class instances and exporting singletons, things like that. So there's that.
Yeah.
I think also it's difficult to say, like, if I was evaluating this as an interviewer, I would say, well, this demonstrates that this person can do it. Um, and even though it doesn't apply to this example, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't apply it could apply to the real world,
Yeah.
right? So that's something that would lead into a conversation of with with the candidate to say, okay, so why did you choose this, and in what situation would this pay off or not pay off, and be
Yeah.
able to explain that. And that to me is powerful to be able to explain. That's valuable to be able to explain the pros and cons of this style.
Yeah.
But you're right; it does depend on the situation
Yeah, you
and
you
yeah.
actually you actually touched upon something really important when we are talking about technical interviews, and that's the fact that you need to have a conversation about the code afterwards. So if you're in a position where you are interviewing someone and you have to give them an assignment, my 5 cents to add to that would be like don't try to create a maze labyrinth like super hard, something that is super hard to make sure they show the abilities. That's probably not the way you want to do that. um, but you probably want to just give them some simple thing where they can which they can like fulfill. And then the more important part is the conversation you will have about the code. Like, all right, why did you choose this approach? What if the situation was like this? What do you think about this, etc.? It gives you an insight into how the candidate actually thinks about stuff, and that's more valuable than just taking a look at the code, because they might have just copy pasted that thing, and you feel like, oh, this is a great solution, but or it isn't. Yeah, basically the conversation about the code is more important than than the code itself. I would say. So yeah,
So you're
we
saying,
yeah. Go ahead.
sorry, you were saying like don't make it super complicated or whatever. So what? I guess my question would be, wouldn't that be a a good thing to to kind of demonstrate your ability, or are you saying like don't go beyond your understanding when
I yeah, I'm
when doing
not
things like this?
talking about the candidate. Like you pinpoint out good stuff. Like using classes shows the ability that the candidate is able to use classes. So oh, someone is saying like where can we find the code for this? So let me just quickly send it to you. Uh, Copy link, and there you go. Um,
It's also at the Discord too.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's also at the Discord, so you can take a look into there. But also here's the link. So yeah, what I'm saying, like, so in Slido, I was in a situation where I would be the QA lead choosing the candidates. I realized really quickly that it has much more value to give them a simple assignment, because even with like a simple assignment, there are a million different ways of doing that. So I'd probably would not go for a complicated, challenging challenge to for because I'm risking that the person might not understand it very well, that they need more time, and basically I'd probably be wasting their time, right? Because those
yeah,
assignments are take a quite a long time. And if you're on a job hunt and you have like 12 applications, and every one of those wants 1 hour or 2 hours or 4 hours of your time,
right.
you're just going to exhaust them. And I really don't want to be that guy for for them.
Yeah,
Uh, and also, I'm not trying to like find a weak spot, so that's why I don't want to like give you a challenge and there go, ha, you made a mistake. that's
yep,
that's never the case, right? Even if we did like live coding, it's never the case where you want to like find mistakes. If you stumble upon interviewer like that, you're probably better off not going into that job. So yeah. Um, so yeah, basically what I'm saying, the conversation about the how you decided to write it like this, right? So why did you decide to use page objects, or why did you decide to create custom commands? Why did you log in before every test? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? How did you structure the test? Do you think it can be improved? How? Tell me how you would do that. Those are
yeah,
really really valuable. So yeah.
yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, I think that like, yeah, when it comes to so you're talking about from like a an interviewer standpoint. I think as a candidate, when it comes to being able to um, flex your muscles, so to speak, or show everything that you can do, I think that you should take full advantage of it. However, you better be able to explain what you actually wrote, and why you chose to write it the way that you did.
Yeah,
Um, you may not be asked for details, but in the event that you are, you should. And actually, maybe even if you're not necessarily asked, but you are given an open opportunity, to explain what you did. be prepared to have that conversation. Say, here are the things that I did. Like, I decided to use, like, point out, like in this case, I used page objects. And the reason why I did it that way is this. And maybe it wouldn't work in this kind of situation. So say, like, okay, I decided to go through it this way, but I could have done it this way if XYZ were the case, and being able to explain that is, for me, super valuable because um, it shows obviously your understanding of different these different paradigms, but also it shows that you are, I mean, I guess in a way, like, humble, because you can say, like, this may not have been the best approach. Like, I think that's good to say that. I think that's totally fine to
Yeah.
say, this may not have worked in this way. I decided to do it this way. I could have done it. I mean, there are live coding, pair programming things where you can say that kind of thing. Most of the most of the challenges that I've had, where I've gotten the job, I failed the test like really badly. But where I was able to come out strong is being able to do that, what I just described, because I knew that to them that was more valuable than the test itself. And
Yeah.
the reason why I feel like I failed is because, like, it was really getting me to, like, in gotchas. It was getting me in situations where it's like, I don't really have a ton of experience in this particular thing, or this is just not the really the a demonstration of my ability. And yeah, and so
I really love what you said. Like, uh, being on an interview, obviously, it can be stressful, and sometimes, like, telling the interviewer a thing like, you know what, I made a mistake, I see it now, like, I would probably do it now that I have this information. I would probably do it a little bit differently. It's, I think, like, for me, if someone said that they have made a mistake and they realized it, like, that, I think it's actually a good sign, definitely a better sign that if they just stood by it. And even though I
yeah.
added some, like, maybe what if you did it like this, would that be okay? And they would, like, stand by it firmly, and then not be able to
Mhm.
change their mind. Obviously depends on the thing, right? I am open to changing my mind, hopefully. And
Mhm.
then uh, then if they're not flexible, then that's kind of, it makes more challenging to have them as a colleague, because sometimes you just want to discuss ideas, pick the better one, change your mind, and that's an important thing. And also, like, show that you don't know everything. I think that's also quite okay. And I know, like, this is not something, it's pretty vulnerable place to be in, to show that you don't know everything, especially when the setup of the interview is like, we want to know everything, like, to tell someone, like, all right, I don't know everything, I don't I you know what, I'd probably Google this.
Yeah.
Because that would be, honestly, that would be my go-to answer for, like, most of the coding challenges. You probably used Google
Yeah.
while you were doing that challenge, right? Or you did the documentation. We did that repeatedly. Like, no one expects
Yeah.
you to know the documentation by heart. uh,
Yeah.
so I think that's, it kind of adds this human layer to the situation, and
Mhm.
to you, in fact,
Yep.
that I think can really help. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love the fact that you pointed this out. Like, all right, I made a mistake. Now it's time to correct it.
Yeah. Yeah. This conversation definitely went in an interesting direction because we ended up talking about, like, interviewing and tests and things like that. And I think this is a good, definitely a good topic to kind of note, for the future. And maybe we can get into it even more, break things down, and especially, for anybody viewing, if you have any questions um, around like SDET specific interviews. Maybe you have a if you have a challenge bring it to us, and we'll take a look at it. It could be something that you took previously or you took in, you're taking currently. We can certainly look at it with you, and or if it's anything around like what we've been talking about, we can certainly get into it a little bit more. Or if you're an interviewer and you want some ideas, um, we've talked before, um, and
Yeah.
so offline, and so we know that we definitely have ideas to bring to the table, and we can certainly get more into it, if it's
Yeah,
if it's going to be helpful.
definitely. Like this interview challenges and coding challenges, etc. These are really really great. I like when we went through this one yesterday. I felt like this is so much fun. Maybe you could send us your interview challenge, and we can like try to
Yeah.
complete it online because that would
Yeah.
be fun. And if you don't get the job and they'll tell you you did it wrong, you can send them the link to the video where we explain everything. So
That's
yeah,
after you've already explained it yourself.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to like redirect you to the Discord. It's scrolling down there, and there's
Yep.
yeah. So there's a channel, the code review, but also like topic suggestions. So you can suggest anything, whether that would be on a blog or a podcast like this one. So yeah, Edison is asking where can we share. Yeah, so I just answered that one. Good. So on the Discord, the tech challenges, the interview challenges, I think that might be quite a fun thing to go through. It definitely was fun for this one. So thank you again, Sir John. Hopefully, I'm always kind of scared that I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Sorry about that if I don't. And yeah, thanks for submitting. I think you are the most frequent contributor to the code review channel, and I'm really glad about that because it's fun content. All right. We got a question in Slido as well. I'm kind of thinking whether we should take questions from the chat or rather from Slido, because we kind of got two places where where people are asking. The chat is definitely a good one
Yeah.
because we can see the interaction here. Slido is kind of more of a thing that you can use when we are not online and you're watching this from like recording and you still want to ask question. That's a great place to go to. Um, Also the Discord. But yeah, we've been reaching almost hour and a half, so I'm trying to trying to decide whether we should jump into the next topic or should we keep at this one or maybe close it. But
Yeah, well, I think it's I think we should for any of you interested, we were going to talk about TypeScript with Cypress.
TypeScript, yeah,
I don't know that we have the time though, at least to really demonstrate and to also take questions. And anybody that's joining right now, you're going on an hour and a half. We don't want to exhaust you. So I think it's safe to say that we should save it, and use the rest of the remaining time to answer questions. And maybe we could just maybe
yeah,
we could also review the existing questions in Slido and either answer them, or we could save it for another time.
yeah. That's fine by me. I did have a thing about TypeScript prepared, but we can do it next time. And I think it will be fun. Uh, But actually, if you are very eager about the topic of TypeScript and using it in Cypress, I am currently recording a course on Cypress, on TypeScript in Cypress, and it's going to be free. It will come out on
All
Test
right.
Automation University in September, or at least I have to submit it until September. So not sure well when it will come out publicly, but it's going to be a good one. If I'm currently have a
Cool.
couple of chapters recorded, I'm very satisfied with it, which is something I'm not often, but I'm really enjoying that, and it's going to be one that will just take you like you don't even know what TypeScript is. You're on square zero, right? And you want to learn that, that's kind of where you can take the course and learn TypeScript from like the very basics until like using TypeScript to just uh, uh, take your Cypress test to a whole another level. So it's
Hmm.
going to be a fun one. So yeah, look, watch out for that. Test Automation University. By the way, if you don't know the resource, you are missing out. It's an all free uh, online resource where you can learn not only Cypress, but you can learn about Selenium and Java and JavaScript for testers. You can learn Playwright. You can use DevOps stuff, Postman, blockchain testing, even API testing in Python. Then there's so much there, and it's all totally
Hmm.
free. So yeah, if
And
there's anyone
that's
who didn't know
provided
about
by
that,
Applitools,
go
right?
check it out. Yeah, it's by Applitools.
Yep.
It's an amazing
Cool.
project. I think it had who I don't know how many people have already joined, uh, but and I don't want to like say the wrong number. Thousands of people. The impact that this had to the tech community was huge. So yeah, hats off to Angie Jones and everyone who's been creating this awesome project and maintaining it, um, and all the instructors. So yeah, really good one.
Cool.
All right, so yeah, the questions, right? Um, so we got one new question in Slido. So Charles is asking about introducing BDD and Gherkin syntax into Cypress tests. So if we have any suggestions, maybe opinions about this one. So Mike, have you used the BDD, Gherkin, Cucumber kind of stuff in Cypress?
I haven't. I've been asked about it. I know that there is a I don't know how well it's been maintained, but I know that there is a Cypress plugin
Hmm.
for that syntax. Um, and I've used not used. I've been more just somewhat familiar with robot framework
Hmm.
in the past. That's really my only exposure to that. I know that there are some benefits to that syntax when you have non-engineers contributing
Hmm.
to the tests. But to be honest, I don't really have. I haven't had an opportunity to um, apply it, and so as such, I don't really have a whole lot of, or rather, enough experience to really say much more in that regard. What about you?
So I have tried it with like the intention to just try it. So let me share my screen because this is the plugin you've been talking about. So there is Cypress Cucumber preprocessor, which enables you to write tests like this, right? So you have the feature, scenario, given, when, then, etc. So uh, the way it works is that it's sort of a page object model, but it's kind of different. But basically, you have these abstractions, which you can sort of like create these puzzle pieces which you connect together and create a test, which is sort of very readable, right? So when I visit DuckDuckGo, I can see a search bar. Then I should see a search bar. And you have your when thing, which will execute this part of code. And then you have a then thing in your, which will execute this part of code. And then you can sort of mix and match and create new scenarios with this. And what this will do, it's called a Cucumber preprocessor. So that's an interesting thing. We touched on TypeScript actually, and and they do
Hmm.
have one thing in common. So when you create your tests in Cypress, uh, they're going to be processed and then injected into browser. So if you write your
Right.
tests in TypeScript, for example, your tests, your TypeScript files are actually going to be compiled into JavaScript, injected to a browser, and then ran. And a similar thing is going to happen with this Cucumber preprocessor. And there's also Markdown preprocessor, which is just going to take a look, in this case, into your feature files, and basically is going to compile and read the scenarios and then create a JavaScript file which is going to execute these pieces of code to run your tests. There are multiple different preprocessors. So there's like a Webpack rollup. So that's like different ways of how you can run those. But where's the markdown one? I wanted to show that. Oh, here it is, right in front of my face. So yeah, you can write a test in markdown where you would have like these three parts: the HTML part, the application you want to test, and the JS part, which is the test code. Gleb likes to use this. It's really nice if you have like a small example that you want to show. And again, this will take the file, convert it into JavaScript, inject it into your browser, and then run it. So that's what these preprocessors do, and Cucumber is one of these. But yeah, so
Hmm.
what this enables you to do to create is to create these feature files where you have your scenarios, and these are sort of like they can help you to like use an sort of a natural language to describe your tests. And to be honest, I'm not like the biggest fan of this approach. And the reason for that is that whenever I want to create a new scenario, I need to create this when or then or some kind of definition over here, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think what's not really effective about this is that when we create these scenarios, we're basically repeating the same code blocks over and over and just creating different combinations of those. And I'm not really sure if that's really valuable. So there's a lot of talking about like the whole abstraction, whole idea of page objects and abstracting your code is that you don't repeat yourself, right? But then for some reason, we create these abstractions and repeat them over and over and over, go through all of the same scenarios over and over, and repeat the same set of actions all the time. And I think we should apply this don't repeat yourself principle to the code or to test execution as well as our code. Although, like, I'm um, not trying to overuse the principle, uh, but um, but yeah, I think with this kind of Gherkin BDD syntax, you will be doing a lot of repeating yourself. So generally, I'm not a huge fan of this. Another argument for using this is that anyone can create these tests if you have these defined. And the counter argument from my side is, why should they? Why do we want anyone to create these tests? They still need to use some kind of code editor, so it's not going to be, I don't know, like your customer success people in the company or product managers or I don't know who creating these tests. It's still going to be testers, so why not just let testers write these, because they're going to do them anyway. And I think that they'll be much more effective using these because the Cypress syntax is already quite readable. Of course, if you don't overcomplicate stuff. And I think you should be fine with this. You still have your describe blocks. Um, you still have your it blocks, and you can actually export them if you just need a report of what's being tested, which scenarios are being tested. Again, that's a problem you can easily solve with a plugin. I think Gleb wrote one for that, like where you can just export all of the names of your tests. So yeah, that's kind of my
Yep.
rant about the cucumber. It's fairly easy to use. I did a stream on cucumber preprocessors back like 2 years ago. So if you want to watch me struggle with that, you can you can go watch that on my channel. But in general, can't say I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate this walkthrough. That was super concise and makes sense now. So I have a little bit more confidence now if somebody asks me about it in the community, because you know I I participate in a few different communities, particularly locally, and people ask about stuff like this. I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. But now at least I have a little bit more to use. I think there's definitely a pattern here, though, that I'm seeing in our conversation, and that is between page objects and this, they're both abstractions. I mean, you kind of said that, but I think it's important when we're talking about abstractions to talk about them, to talk about page objects and and Cucumber as what from the when, just like we would talk about any other abstraction, I think we should treat it that way,
Mhm.
and so we need to talk about, like, well, what are the pros and cons of these abstractions? What is the cost to the business? What's the cost to performance and so forth? And consider those things. What I don't One of the things that I don't like about either of these is they're sort of forced abstractions. In other words, if I want to be able to, like not to nothing against Surgeon and his approach with the with that, because and that can work, but like a lot of those page objects were like so simple that and so like I just think about it, like if I'm writing the this page object, and there's really not that much that we're abstracting. It's almost like, why I can't help but ask myself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, we're sticking to this page objects, but where is it beneficial? And it's beneficial in this one place, but almost everywhere else it's not. It's like we're taking one line and we're swapping it with another line, and in the
Yeah.
process adding additional work to the maintenance, right? Because
Mhm.
now it's like we're dealing with multiple files. When something goes wrong, now I have to go digging into another file, and so forth.
Plus, you have to
um
name it, and you have to have unique names for lots of stuff. And as we know,
Yep.
naming stuff is one of the hardest things in programming, right?
Well, yeah, and then also maintaining those names. Like a lot of times, like in at Lattice, we actually got rid of the page object model because that was something that was being used before I started at the
Hmm.
company, and for good reason. Page objects is something that's very familiar to folks that have a Selenium background, so it makes sense that you would use that. But what I found is that a lot of these methods within a page object didn't really explain, wasn't accurate to what was actually going on. So in
Hmm.
other words, it said it was doing one thing, but then when I looked at into the code, it was actually doing either more or less than what the name implied, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And so going back to readability, right? You're trying to, like I said, a good litmus test is I want to be able to look at this spec and know exactly what's going on without having to run it. Well, if you're not naming your methods appropriately, now your test isn't really doesn't read what it's actually, what it actually says is not actually what it's
Yeah,
doing, and so that can create confusion and create additional work,
yeah,
additional cost into maintaining it.
that's that's true. Like you have with Cypress, you have this great tool at your disposal, this the Cypress app, the runner, right? Which, if there's an error, it will spit out the error. It will show you the exact place in the code where your test has failed. It will show you some hints into what the command has expected, what it got, what kind of arguments it got, if there's the problem, or basically what happened. Um, the more you use different kind of abstractions, the more you need to dig in. Like the the argument I sometimes use, like reviewing different code bases, is like, all right, if a test fails, how many files you need to open in order to debug it? If it's more than two, it's probably
Yep.
too much. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and we see that, like I'm a big fan of that. Like don't abstract everything just for the sake of abstraction, just for the sake of not repeating the same line twice. You can repeat the same line
Yep.
twice, uh, or even three times, or even 10 times, depending on the size of the code base, right? If you have like thousands of tests, you're probably going to repeat yourself anyway. It's inevitable that you don't you create the same method twice or something like that will happen, right? It's easy
Yeah.
that things like these happen. So so yeah, like abstracting things just for sake of abstracting things, it's probably not the best way of doing that. And plus, I'm surprised that Edison is saying in BDD, if something breaks, you need to fix it in a lot of places, which is interesting. I don't have too much experience with that, so that's why I don't have this argument. But it's interesting because I thought like the whole point of using this BDD thing is to help you like have things only in one place, so you don't actually need to you actually can avoid the problem of, if something changes, which is a lot nowadays with the software, um,
Yep.
that you don't have the whole overhead of changing it on multiple places. So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I think about it too from a workflow standpoint. So, and maybe like the question that you need to ask, because there's another pattern here that I'm recognizing with abstraction is asking the question, what happens when it breaks? You know, that's probably something that you need to ask is what happens when it breaks. So, with with Cucumber, what happens when the person that's writing the feature file, what happens when that person runs into a problem? You know, Then now they have to involve somebody else in order to fix the underlying thing. Whereas without it, presumably the person that's actually writing the spec is also the person that can run it and fix it if it breaks, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily involving third party, it's not
Hmm.
involving other. And if that's not the case, if you, or rather if you are writing specs and something breaks and you have to call on someone else to fix it, that I think is an indication that there's a problem. Like you should be
Hmm.
able to fix it. If you don't understand it because it's not readable, that's a problem. If you have to involve someone else, that's I don't know why you would have to involve someone else, but yeah, you need to rethink that.
In the meantime, I peeked in the chat, and Chao actually has a great point. Like one of his personal KPI is how long it would take to fix a test or update it to the new
Yep.
system behavior. And that's a really good one, because the automation, creating test automation, is sort of like a living thing. There's this illusion, let's automate stuff so we don't have to think about it. It's not the right way to think about test automation, because the software changes, the tests are going to change, um, requirements are going to change. So not only we need to have automation, we need to maintain that automation. And it's sometimes it's 50-50 work. Sometimes the maintenance takes much more than just creating the test. And sometimes it just take a full team of people to take care of that. So it's test automation is not free, but it does help a lot. It may not seem like that at the beginnings, when the tests are flaky and it's always failing and blocking the release and all these kinds of problems, right? But but yeah, it does save you time, but it comes with a cost. It does need to have um, maintenance. Oh, sorry, you're Charles. Yeah, I thought like you had because you had Charles in Slido and you had Chow and in the chat. Yeah, sorry, Charles.
Cool.
Great point, Charles. It's a good KPI to have. Like how long it will take me to fix this test if it fails. It's a good one. I like. I also think about this like that. So tests are going to fail. All right. How long it will take me to find out what failed? How long it will take me to fix it? Uh, that's that's the cost of the maintenance. So yeah, should we wrap it up here?
I think we should. I think for the sake of our viewers.
I'm kind of full of energy. To be honest, I feel like I need to do the podcast today. I'm not feeling it, but as soon as we went live, I felt really good. This was a really nice conversation, and thank you, Mike. But also wanted to highlight all of the people in the chat. The chat has been live today and had some great input. So thank you very much
Yep.
for that. Thank you for not leaving us hanging, but actually entering the conversation and talking to us.
Yeah.
It was a real pleasure today.
Yeah. Yep. We really appreciate the participation. Um, because we're obviously we love to chat, right? Offline and streaming. There's no shortage of topics, but we also are doing this for the greater community, and so your participation is validation that we're on the right track in terms of our content, but also direction of where to go, in terms of our content. Because if we're just here, just the two of us chatting about stuff that, only interests us, then, we're not really serving the community. And so we
Exactly.
want to, yeah, that's why we have obviously the chat, which we try to keep up with. And we also have the Discord and the Slido. So there's plenty of opportunities to submit questions, to make suggestions, to um, yeah, give us the content for next time. So keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly as Mike said. Thank you very much. Keep those suggestions coming. Send us your tech interview assignments. That's going to be fun. And tune in
Yeah.
next time for the TypeScript we promised today and didn't
Yep.
deliver. So, so hopefully no one's mad, but at least we got a teaser for the next time, and we can make sure you'll come.
Yep.
Looking forward to the next one. See you guys, and happy testing, everyone.